I'm 88 years old now, and there's a decision I made when I was 35 that I think about every single day. Not because I didn't know it mattered, but because I thought I was doing the right thing. But that choice, one conversation, one moment where I chose certainty over trust, it broke something in my family that never healed. I'm telling you this because I don't have many years left, and I need someone to know. Not for forgiveness. I'm long past that. But because you might be standing where I stood, and you might think like I did, that you're protecting something when you're actually destroying it. When I was 35, I had a wife, 2 young children, and a decent job managing a hardware store in a small town in Pennsylvania. We weren't rich, but we were stable. My father had recently passed, and he left behind a little money. Not a fortune, but enough to make a difference. Around $18,000, which in 1973 felt like a lot. My younger brother, Danny, was 32 at the time. He'd always been the dreamer in the family. Played guitar, talked about opening a music shop, moved from job to job. My father used to worry about him. I used to worry about him. He was smart, but he didn't have direction. At least that's what I thought. A few months after the funeral, Danny came to me with an idea. He wanted to use his half of the inheritance to start a small business. A record store. He'd found a location, worked out some numbers, and he wanted me to go in on it with him. He said we could run it together, that it could be something for both of us. I remember sitting at my kitchen table with him, looking at the papers he brought. My wife was putting the kids to bed in the next room. Danny was excited. His eyes were bright in a way I hadn't seen in years. He kept saying, "This could really work. I know it could." But I didn't believe him. I thought about my father, who had worked 40 years at the same plant to leave us that money. I thought about my own kids, about college funds and mortgages and car repairs. I thought about how many of Danny's ideas had fizzled out before, and I made a decision. I told him no. I told him I thought it was too risky, that he didn't have experience running a business, that the music industry was unstable. I told him I needed to think about my family first, and that I was going to put my half of the inheritance into savings. Something safe. Something smart. He didn't argue. He just nodded, folded up his papers, and left. I thought I'd done the responsible thing. My wife agreed. We put the money into a savings account and eventually used it for a down payment on a bigger house. I kept working at the hardware store. Life went on. Danny opened the record store anyway. He took out a loan, used his half of the inheritance, and did it on his own. I didn't help him move in. I didn't go to the opening. I think I told myself I was too busy, but the truth is I didn't want to watch him fail. I thought it was inevitable. But he didn't fail. The store did well. Really well. Within a few years, he'd paid off the loan and opened a second location. He started selling instruments, offering lessons, hosting local bands. By the time he was 40, he owned 3 stores and had a reputation all over the state. He'd built something real. And I was still managing the hardware store. I want to say I was happy for him, but I wasn't. I was ashamed. And that shame turned into distance. I stopped calling as much. When we saw each other at holidays, I kept conversations short. I made excuses for why I couldn't visit. My wife would ask why I didn't talk to Danny anymore, and I'd say we were just busy. Different lives. But Danny knew. He never said it, but he knew. The years passed. My kids grew up. I eventually retired. The hardware store closed down a few years after I left. It couldn't compete with the big chains. The house we bought with that inheritance money became too big for just the 2 of us, and we sold it at a loss during the recession. Danny kept building. His kids worked in the stores. He became a pillar in the community. People loved him. We barely spoke. In 2009, Danny had a heart attack. He survived, but it slowed him down. I heard about it from a cousin. I didn't visit him in the hospital. I told myself he had plenty of support. I told myself it would be awkward after so many years. 3 years later, he had another one. This time, he didn't make it. He was 71. I went to the funeral. The church was packed. Person after person stood up and talked about what Danny had meant to them. His generosity, his encouragement, how he'd given kids their first jobs, how he'd kept music alive in a town that was dying. His daughter spoke about how her father taught her to take risks, to believe in herself even when others didn't. I sat in the back and realized I had been one of those others. After the service, his oldest son came up to me. He shook my hand and said, "Dad always talked about you. He really looked up to you, you know." I didn't know. I didn't know because I'd spent 30 years avoiding him. I went home that night and pulled out some old photos. There was one of Danny and me from when we were kids, arms around each other, grinning. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen him smile like that as an adult. I thought about that night at my kitchen table. I thought about how sure I was that I was making the right call. I thought about the word I kept using, responsible. But what I'd really been was afraid. Afraid that if Danny succeeded without me, it would mean I'd made the wrong choice. And when he did succeed, I couldn't stand to be near him, because his life was proof that I'd chosen fear over faith. In him. In us. I didn't just refuse to invest money. I refused to invest in my own brother. And the cost wasn't financial. The cost was that I spent decades building a wall between us, and by the time I realized what I'd done, he was gone. My wife died 4 years ago. My children live in different states. We talk on the phone, but it's surface level. Polite. I think they learned distance from me. I'm 88 now. I live alone. I think about Danny almost every day. I think about what it would have been like to build something with him, to be part of his success, not threatened by it. I think about the conversations we could have had, the time we could have spent together. I think about his kids, who barely know me. I made a decision at 35 that I thought was smart. But it wasn't smart. It was small. And that smallness spread through my life like a crack in a foundation. If you're reading this and someone you love is asking for your support, not your money, but your belief, please don't do what I did. Don't let fear disguise itself as wisdom. Don't convince yourself that protecting what you have is the same as doing the right thing. Because the thing I was protecting, my pride, my certainty, my sense of being the responsible one, none of it mattered. And the thing I lost can't be bought back. I have maybe a few years left, if I'm lucky, and I'll spend all of them wishing I'd said yes.